dimensionalized reality. Okay, so this is called the Betahuva key. And it's called the key because what it gives you is the literal diagram of the 12 strands of the silicate matrix gene code and how they plug into each other. Now, if you will look, I have a series of darker dots and lighter dots, and each are marked off as part of one strand. Now, the darker dots represent the magnetic heli in that strand, and it contains 12 base codes. The electrical heli, which is the light dots in that strand, contains 12 acceleration codes. The base codes and the acceleration codes have a sound equivalent. They are both subtones, and when they combine, they form a full tone. So if you combine the 12 and 12, you have 24 pieces right now, you combine them, you end up with 12 full tones. Now, what's really fun, I love this part for some reason. I think I've probably been working on it for many incarnations. When the tones are combined, so you have your base codes, which are a base tone, and you have your acceleration codes, which are an overtone. You combine a base tone and an overtone, you get a resonant tone. There's your full tone. Now, those full tones were represented in many of our ancient teachings. They actually followed some of the patternings of the original Hebrew alphabet. They were expressed in the Hebrew language. There were various languages. Basically, 5 languages are programmed into the DNA, but when it comes to the primary language that held the energy signatures, that controlled the primary 12 tones, it was the Hebrew language that controlled the 12 tones. And if there was any subtones or smaller energy imprints, there were other languages that applied to those. So if you wanted to get, in the old days, it worked that if you wanted to get control over your DNA code and how to handle it, you need the map, for one, to know where the strands were, what they meant, how they corresponded to these, which we'll get to in a minute. And you would need to know the codes, what sound tones these were. The sound tones were expressed in terms of the letters of the alphabet, of the Hebrew alphabet, but it has been eons since the correct sequences of those letters have been given. And many, many scholars, from what I understand, have been spending many, many eons trying to find out what the sequences of what they call the fire letters are. The fire letters, which are addressed in things like the Keys of Enoch and those kind of things, the fire letters are the 12 tones, the primary 12 tones. There's many more than that, but each strand has 12 primary tones, or fire letters. They're light symbol codes, and they actually start out as light. That's why they're called fire letters. They later turn to sound when they become activated in the DNA, and this is something this was new to me. I knew a little bit about the fire letters, but this was a new part. When the codes are not fully activated in a DNA strand, they exist within the morphogenetic field as a standing wave pattern, a scalar wave. They exist as light. When those patterns of light get intersected by certain patterns of sound, things happen. And one of the things that happens is they come from dormancy as a standing wave pattern within the DNA strand, imprint, into the active DNA strand as a dormant sound tone. But at least it's into the active physical DNA strand now. Then it has to be activated once it's there. But you can, masters of the Betahuva, know how to program anything in to their DNA. They can manifest anything right through their bodies. They can manifest events. They can manifest worlds. We're not that good. We're just working on knowing enough about it to be able to activate things in the DNA and to reverse mutate other things that are going to stop the activations from taking place. The reason it's so important right now is because we are entering a time acceleration. There's a condition called molecular compaction that the body will experience if it does not accelerate its particle pulsation rhythm. There's one way to accelerate the body's particle pulsation rhythm high enough to not have any negative effects from this time acceleration, and that is to activate the DNA to a 4.5 strand level accretion. That means 4.5 strands need to activate. We're still roaming around thinking we have 2, that's it. So it's important that we begin to understand the structure. It's not just, oh, gee, maybe I'll play with my DNA tonight. You know, there is a real reason for it. Now, we're not all going to fall over and die from molecular compaction. It doesn't exactly work that way. It's much more subtle. Molecular compaction occurs because during the next 18 years, there are numerous things happening, which I'm not going to get heavily into in this tape, but there are increased interdimensional scalar wave patterns moving into the Earth's grid. There are interdimensional electromagnetic wave patterns that our grid is not used to having. We are going to get infusions of D4, D5, D6, 7, 8, and 9 frequency into the Earth's grid and into the Earth's crust and its core and our bioenergetic fields between now and 2017. If your morphogenetic field, because it's blocked by not having the right codes to allow it to expand to hold those frequencies will push in on the crystalline lattice work of the blueprint that your body is built on. And it will begin to poke holes in it, just as if you had a glass in your hand and you squeezed it too tight. The frequencies coming in become pressure on the crystalline lattice work of the body. And after a certain point, it will begin to, and like I said, it's not right away. It's not you're going to fall over and get a horrible disease tomorrow or anything. It will be a progressive acceleration of the aging and deterioration process. That's what will come of it. And it will affect everyone differently. It depends on where your DNA is. You know, if you have a higher resonating code and you're able to expand and take in more of those scalar wave patterns, you won't show much of the results. Some people will be able to use it to actually activate higher strands, where they're actually get younger. You know? They'll be in better health. But others will get stuck within the lower DNA strand counts, and the first effects would be, they said, within the bone structure. You would begin to get weakness in bone and teeth and that kind of thing. And the next would be within the immune system. And they didn't tell me after that, you know, what would be the results. That's enough, you know. And I've already experienced some of it myself. I've had experiences of being exposed through my experiences with the Guardians, being taken places, I've been taken through portals, so I know what it feels like. That's scalar wave exposure. And I have had things like teeth break right after. I mean, just break for no reason. You know, so it does happen. I'm not an example of what will happen to everybody because I've been on the extreme course because I've been taken all over the place and really exposed to interdimensional frequencies. But this is something that's worth thinking about, not getting real scared about, oh my God, it's going to, you know, I'm going to die of molecular compaction. There are worse things that could happen because as long as you know you can just get out of your body and, you know, go on to the next level when you cross over. But we can actually learn to use this increase of energy that's coming to our planet to improve our condition rather than to let it tear us down.
I'm a